Even though the show's called The 100, ironically, at the start of this season, there are only 48 kids left from that initial crash. The 100, Season 2. So, in the second season of The 100, Clarke and the rest of the 48 find themselves in this society that has been there ever since the nuclear war began. They just held up in this really elaborate bunker system that they made into their society, and they've been hanging out there for the past almost century. Now, the reason these people have not come up for air is because they can't. Their bodies, their immune systems haven't adjusted to the irradiated land yet, and they would die upon stepping out without a hazmat suit. But this society is not all peaceful and civilized as it seems to be. This society has a very dark, very sinister, quite disturbing secret. Disturbing to the point where I had to look away for a bit, because it's the kind of thing that makes my stomach crawl. Unbeknownst to the 48 kids, the people of the Ark Station have crash-landed and started up their own camp. They call it Camp Jaha, named after their fearless leader, who at the start of the series is still above the Ark Station. And they too are encountering trouble from the Grounders. However, they know that they won't be able to fight them off. Marcus has an idea of potentially starting up diplomacy. Now, will this work? We'll see. Meanwhile, poor Thelonious is stuck up in the Ark Station. He was ready to sacrifice himself so that everyone else could get off. However, he's not done yet. He finds a new reason to get off, to try to get off, because he has a higher purpose. This season of The 100 really brought on the action. It really brought on the intensity. Every bit of the potential that the first season had, that the first season promised, the second season absolutely delivers on. I mean, a show as violent as this, as intense as this, there is no room for cop-outs. And right up to the very end, there is something, I mean, it shows in the season finale. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but in the very end of this season, something quite devastating happens. It feels like a no-win situation for true morality. I know what I'm saying doesn't make sense, but trust me, this show is not afraid to go there. It also does an interesting job at world building. It's kind of like Game of Thrones a bit, albeit a bit more focused, as it doesn't have 10 characters with different point of views that need to get their 5 minutes of screen time in each episode like Game of Thrones does. It's not that decentralized. It has a tighter focus in that. You see more of how the Grounders' way of life works. You kind of start getting a grasp at kind of where things are, and that's partially thanks to the new credits sequence that they have. Yes, this season of The 100 introduces a nice little 30-second opening credit sequence that shows you the different parts of the region that they are all hanging out in on Earth. And it does kind of remind me of the Game of Thrones intro, albeit with a more tech look, as it shows the different locations people are at. It's not as long as the Game of Thrones intro, and it only just shows the main cast people and Jason Rothenberg's name, as he is the developer of the series. But for me, it was really nice to watch a network show, that had a 30-second intro sequence. Most shows nowadays simply just pop the title up there for 5 to 10 seconds and they move on with the show and they just play the credits in the next scene. I do miss the 90s. The 90s never did that. Gone are the days of the Friends theme song, the intense intro of ER, the West Wing theme. It seems like the credit sequences go to the cable shows now. I know it seems like I'm focusing way too much on the title sequence, but it's really nice to see a show that doesn't take the lazy route, that doesn't say, put the title up there because we need more screen time. I love watching title sequences with theme songs that I could try to hum along to, because it makes me feel like a real TV fan. It makes me feel like I'm watching a real TV show. At least that's just my opinion. But enough about the title sequence. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the characters. The character arcs are great in this show. They're very much realized from season 1, in that, you know, the characters you knew from season 1 go a certain direction to the point where they almost become someone else by the end of this season. Clarke embraces her position of leadership to the point where when she finally reunites with her people, including her mother, there's kind of a tension between the council and her. She's the one that really knows what's going on, that really has a grasp on how to work things out with the conflicts of this show. And it really shows between her and her mother's relationship, which starts out all nice because they haven't seen each other in a while and it's bliss, but, you know, there's still some cracks there, and the cracks start to crack more, I guess, when leadership clashes. And that was really great to see. Octavia starts becoming a bit more self-sustaining. She becomes more powerful, like physically. She starts her journey to becoming more of a warrior, more of a hands-on kind of person when it comes to the armed conflicts that take place in this show. Finn, who always started out as the pacifist, starts becoming a little more trigger-happy, a little more paranoid, I guess you can say, and it's going to lead to some major consequences by the end of things. I'd love to talk more about where all of the characters are going, what they're thinking, but I feel like that would be spoiling some really big moments of this show, and this show has some really great moments. What helped for this show was that even though it was renewed for a full season, like it wasn't just like a half season thing of 13 episodes like season 1 was, but it was only 16 episodes long, the second season. And this allowed for the show to not have pacing issues. They didn't renew it for the full 22 episodes because they wanted to make room on the schedule to introduce iZombie, but that actually worked out very well for them because it allowed for the pacing to be very good. There was rarely ever a dull moment where it felt like the plot was really stalling. Everything felt like it was paced, you know, very steadily, but with almost kind of a natural progression. I mean, eventually you kind of knew where it was heading, but at the same time you didn't feel like it was dragging. You didn't feel like, oh my gosh, let's get to the big battle already. You didn't feel that way. Probably also allowed them to spend more money, to save more money perhaps, so that they could spend more. You know, 22 episodes is more expensive to do than only 16 episodes, especially with this kind of show, because this is a science fiction apocalyptic show taking place out in the forest with lots of really elaborate costume design, especially for the grounders. So they really had to make sure they had enough money, and that's probably another reason why they might have had it only at 16 episodes, because they realized we don't want to spend more money than we have to, and it's just as well. I also appreciate how good with the shaky cam they are in this show. The basis of this show is that it is filmed with a kind of a handheld camera style, so there are some like shakes. It doesn't feel like many of the shots are on a tripod, but it doesn't feel like utter chaos like they're doing this with the camera. I watched a show recently that I stopped watching very quickly called Blind Spot on NBC, and the thing that really turned me off of that show was that the camera movements were just god-awful, and it was almost nauseating to watch. Jason Rothenberg, the showrunner and developer, really knows what he's doing with this show. Now, even though this show is executive produced by Leslie Morgenstein and his production company Alloy Entertainment, which also oversees The Vampire Diaries, the originals, and also oversaw Gossip Girl, it doesn't feel like it's just doing things for ratings. It doesn't feel like it's stretching itself. It doesn't feel like it's pandering to a young audience. Even though most of the characters are teenagers, a good portion of them are also adults, and it's great to see them also have big importance as well. I would definitely recommend this show even more after watching the second season. The second season is definitely an improvement on the first season, but not in a way that it makes the first season look bad. It makes it seem like it's the seed. It's the seed that sprouts something extraordinary, and season 2 is the start of something extraordinary, and that there's a piece of that extraordinary, at least I'm assuming there's a piece of that extraordinary, if you're keeping up with my metaphor here, considering that they're going to make more of this. I mean, there's a third season coming out really soon, but what they show here is truly entertaining, and I really hope that this isn't a case of them blowing their wad on this second season and not being able to do what to do next afterwards. That's what I'm a little worried about for season 3. I really hope that they didn't go all the way and now they're struggling to find new storylines. I really hope that's not the case. I really hope season 3 is a great follow-up to the greatness that was season 2. Season 2 was wonderful. If you haven't watched The 100, please watch the first 2 seasons. They're all on Netflix right now, and there's only 29 episodes, so you have a couple weeks, maybe. I don't know, it depends on when I release this video. But you got 29 episodes, and please watch the 3rd season. This is definitely a show that deserves to be watched more. It doesn't have as high a viewership as many of the other CW shows, and it really deserves it. That was my review of The 100 Season 2, and now I'm going to talk about what I hope for Season 3. First of all, I hope that this show is not going to be milked. I hope Jason Rothenberg is smart to kind of think ahead on where the end game is. That he's not setting this up to be just milked to death like The Vampire Diaries is right now. That show should have gone out a few years ago, in my opinion. I would say, honestly, there's probably 2 to 3 more years left in this show, which would be enough, assuming they're still doing the 16-episode season thing. It would be enough to get to that 66-episode mark that they need to syndicate this show to other networks. But I hope that they don't plan on going over 100, because I think that would be really pushing it, and I don't think this show has too many years in it. I think if done right, this could be a great show done in 5, same way that Breaking Bad and other notable dramas have been. Things I want to specifically see in Season 3, which might seem a little futile now, considering that most of the writing is done at this point, since they already have the first few episodes finished, if not the entire season finished, upon my recording this, let alone my releasing this. Both of these things I want to see in the 3rd season pertain to children. There's not a whole lot of children. You never see children running around in any of the areas unless they make like an explicit reference to children, like the scene if there's a kid important. You don't see like kids running around in the background. And I'm thinking, these people have kids, right? I mean, they are civilizations, they are societies. That's just something I'd like to see. I mean, I know kids can be difficult to work with sometimes because, you know, they're just kids and they haven't really grown up, they're not mature yet, but it would be really nice, it'd be more realistic to see, and not reminding myself that I'm watching a TV show. Another thing I'd like to see is someone having a baby in which 2 characters, I don't know which characters, but 2 characters in the show, possibly the teen characters, I think that would be more interesting. If 2 of the teen characters, you know, have sex and one of them gets pregnant and they're going to have a baby, and that's a major storyline in the show. If it has to be any one couple, I would say Octavia and Lincoln. That would be really interesting, given that they're both from 2 different tribes, and it would be kind of seen as like a unity thing. But either way, it would be 2 people that were considered minors back in the ARC station that are now having kids, and that would normally be a problem, like, here in the now in reality, because being a teenage parent can be extremely hard, especially since you can't get an education, you probably can't get a good job. But it probably must have been even harder on the ARC, because that would be 1 extra kid, which takes up too much of the population, and there'd be this idea, okay, someone has to be spaced for this, or floated, as they say on this show. But now that they're on this new world, it'd be more of like them growing up too quickly. That's another theme of this show, is that these kids, that's their characters, they're kids, they're growing up a lot quicker than they would have thought, because they're dealing with armed conflict, with really nasty things. This would just be another way of showing how much maturity is required to live now, since 2 of them are going to have a baby together. That's just something I'd like to see. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving this show too much credit. I don't know. All I can say is that I'm really enjoying this show. I can't wait for the 3rd season to premiere on Thursday, January 21st at 9/8 Central on the CW. I hope it's great. I hope it stays great. I hope it's so good that I might end up dropping Scandal because it's on the same time slot. Thanks for watching my review of The 100 Season 2, and I will see you next time.